We came here when I was 12, 12 and a half, and I didn't speak any English. The first English was in the airplane. Fasten your seatbelt. Fasten your seatbelt, German. And don't walk and walk in Berkeley, the sign across the streets. Those were my first English words.
Wow.
And my mom threw me in with the Boy Scouts and stuff so I could learn English. And my neighbors played with us, the kids. And I learned to say, I don't understand English so well, no one believed me. They just keep talking. And for hours sometimes on the bus, they would just keep talking. And I would just pretend that I heard and nod at the right time and so forth. Anyway, I was supposed to be in 7th grade. And my mother said, I heard junior high, it's not that great. We'll just skip it because you don't speak English anyway. So we'll go to 9th grade. I went to 9th grade.
Oh my goodness.
I went to English 1A.
That's awesome.
And then she brought me to the principal, and I was wearing these Swiss shorts, and nobody was wearing shorts at the time. The principal said, you might want to take him home. Oh no, he'll be fine.
Oh my goodness.
So by the third, about the third class, they forgot to tell him that I don't speak English. And I was going through the day, and I came to the English class, and this teacher read a story or recited a story for about 10 minutes. Then she said, okay, whatever you heard, you write it down. And I wrote, I am from Switzerland. I don't speak English. I wrote it so many times because I wanted to look busy.
That's great.
Did you feel did you feel like defeated?
No, I felt fine. Look, I was alive. I'm here. Everything's fine. One of the places where I was 12 years old and going to high school. Remember, you asked the question. You said, "Did you feel defeated?" Because remember,
Yes.
they forgot that I didn't speak English and I was wearing shorts.
Yeah, you were totally different. You were
Yeah.
from Switzerland.
And I answered you that I felt fine.
Yeah.
And basically, I was grateful to be alive. And I want to insert something there because I grew up through a lot of trauma. And by the time I was 12, I couldn't even feel my feelings. What happened was I came to Switzerland and my mom announced that we had to go to an orphanage. The bus was there and it was so hard. I did not want to let go of my mom because that was all I had left. I lost my dad. We lost everything when we were escaping. And so it was like they had to peel me off. And I remember even on the bus that I would try to remember all the turns and stuff so I could find my way back. What happens naturally when a young person is traumatized is they turn off their ability to feel the feelings because they don't know how to cope with them. The young people, if they're too young, they weren't equipped to deal with those feelings. And I think even people like in the military who see really atrocious things, they're not equipped to process those properly, and they get this, what's called post-traumatic stress. The trauma's gone, but the stress still exists. I remember my sister, she lives in Germany, and a neighbor found a fox, a baby fox, in the forest near her, and brought it to her saying, you raise dogs, you wouldn't mind raising this fox because the fox was abandoned or lost connection with his family. And so she raised this fox for several months till the fox grew. And then they thought the fox doesn't belong in a house. So they drove this fox for a few hours and let him go in a forest. And the fox was sleeping in the car. And 9 weeks later, the fox showed up at the house. Totally blew my mind. It's about 100 miles in 9 weeks, and the fox found the way to their house. It's built in us, these relationships, these connections. Obviously, the fox knew the love and wanted to get back to his or her family.
Yeah.
And we're all drawn like that. And it's an extreme example. It's unbelievable. Yeah. Finally, they gave the fox to a zoo. But what happens for us to cope and compensate, we lose track of our ability to feel. And that's what happened to me. To show you how extreme this was, because the point I want to make is how I learned to overcome this, how precious it became for me. It's the best thing I've ever learned. And I'd like to share that with you. So one day when I was 12, maybe 6 months before we came to California, I was allowed to visit my mom in her apartment in Zurich, which is kind of the bigger city near where the orphanage was. And so I could take the train to that city. So that day I was there early, but I forgot that I was there early. I lost track of time. So the train was there, and I thought, I'm almost missing my train. And I jumped into the train, and it was the wrong train. It was going in the wrong direction. And you remember that I had this incident on the train where we got arrested.
Right.
And so I had this backflash, this memory of I'm in the wrong train. I'm not allowed to be here. I don't have a ticket, and I'm going to be arrested and shot and killed. I was imagining all these things and attempting to pretend that I didn't exist so the conductor wouldn't find out I didn't have a ticket. So for some reason, this really nice man, he left me alone. He didn't even bother me. As soon as the train stopped, I jumped out of the train, and I was so scared that I ran all the way back to the station where I was supposed to be and still beat the train and got onto the right train. And I was so scared. So all of that was like a memory that got reactivated, and I was scared that I would be, killed. This is what happens in post-traumatic stress. The stress exists, and it's like automatic. It's beyond your control, but the trauma is gone.
Yeah, no.
This is like an automatic
You're reliving
interaction.
it. Yeah.
And you're reliving a memory. And this is a dysfunction that is very depleting. Many people suffer from this. And I know people, I've met people, I've read about people. They experience a bad experience like the Holocaust, and then they never talk about it because they're so afraid that if they revisit that memory, it will hurt them or it will be disconcerting to them. And so what we do is we protect ourselves and we fend off those memories. We think that that's the best way to live, but it really isn't, because the more you push it away, it's still active. And so that's what happened to me with that. And then I didn't tell you, but when I was like 4 years old, maybe 5, my uncle threw me in this pool of water, testing out whether I could swim and whether I was a fish. And I couldn't swim, so I almost drowned. And that memory of drowning, I kept dreaming about it. And so it's like it happened to me, but then every time I would dream about it, it would be like I drowned again, because it was a reliving of that memory. So that by the time I was in Switzerland, we were going to learn to swim in the lake, I was petrified. I was so afraid. I was like immobilized by the fear that I'm going to drown. And it was almost like a conviction. And it took everything I had, and the only thing that beat that fear was the embarrassment of not participating and then being made fun of by my peers and so forth. And that fear beat this fear. And it's amazing, how I made it and learned to swim. I just was able to let go the less qualified fear. Okay? So these are like a couple of experiences of what happens. First of all, I couldn't feel. It took some decades. By the time I was 38, my heart started to hurt. I mean, over my physical heart. It was like I had chest pain. And they had me wear some heart monitor. And the cardiologist had a consultation with me. He said, "Your heart's way better than mine. I'll trade you any day." You don't
Not
have
your
it,
heart.
no problem with your heart. But it was this stress was catching up with me. And so when I was just a couple of years later, 40, I had met this doctor. He was an MD, and he also had a PhD in neurology or something from Germany. And he invited me to this retreat. He said, it's called Physician Heal Yourself, and he was the host of it. So it took all my courage to drive to New Mexico to this monastery, and it was only like 12 people. And what we learned was, if something is not happening right now, it's not happening. And I said, what? And they said, if something is not happening right now, it's not happening. And I said, what? And it was like, if something's not happening right now, it's not happening. I could not believe that because I realized if that's the truth, then I'm living in an imaginary world that's really not happening. Just like when I was afraid of being arrested in the train, the Swiss guy had no idea and there was no such thing happening at all. But I was living something that really wasn't happening. It was imaginary. And
I just want to chime in for 1 second. I think that's really awesome because so much in life, people have a tendency of having their past, be it good or bad, and dwelling on that area and then not encountering the present.
The reality of the present.
The reality
They're
of the present.
reacting from something that happened a long time ago.
Yeah, and vice versa, to where like they're in a certain state and they know they have to deal with this state, but they choose not to deal with this state, and they tell themselves, I'm going to deal with this issue I have down the road, right? So they live in the future, and they never deal with their life. So that's very powerful, when you come to a place of understanding.
yes,
So continue.
it's very common.
Yeah.
It's very common. In fact, most of us live in the so-called past. So what I realized is there are 3 levels of reality in my experience. And I'm so happy to be able to share this. I was so happy all day because I saw this. The lowest level of reality is misery, basically. And nearly everybody lives there because they believe the past exists and the past is real. And so what I learned is to question that. Because when they said, if it's not happening right now, it's not happening. What it means, another way of saying it is the only thing that's happening is what's happening right here and right now. I'm a physics major. This is a basic physics reality of time and space that right now is the only time there is, and right here is the only place I am. And so I could not believe how much I didn't believe this, how difficult it was for me to believe this simple truth. It was a 7-day retreat, and we kept repeating this simple thing. The next day I'd wake up and say, what did he say? What is this we're doing? And we were practicing using our senses, our eyes, our ears, our touch, sometimes our taste, to realize the difference between the physical truth, the things that are actually happening with our senses we can discern, versus the things that we bring into this moment that really have no basis in reality. They're not real. They're imaginary. They're fantasy. They're like a cartoon that we bring. And it's because of this false belief that is so rooted in our society and in the world that the past exists. And it's a simple physics thing. It does not exist. The only thing that exists is the concept, the idea, so we can talk about it. But the reality of the past is that it doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is this moment from this perspective. You only live today. And even there's the prayer, give us today our bread for today. So we're responsible to live for today, in today, and of today we can only live this moment. This was the most life-changing thing for me because it freed me up from living in the memory through my imagination, giving power to a memory that really has no ground in reality, no basis in reality, but it's something that I'm allowing to affect me today and preoccupy my heart. And so when I have a feeling like I get angry or afraid, that feeling may be due to a memory that I'm reliving and not really due to anything real today, like being in that train and being scared to death. It had nothing to do with that moment in a Swiss train, totally different from where I had been. So to be mature, one definition is to use our senses repeatedly, to exercise our senses, to discern between what is true and what is not true, or what is true and what is less true, what is good and what is not so good. And the thing I learned, it's not so good to live in a fantasy, to live in a world that is not now, that is not real, that doesn't really exist. So the second level of reality is the present. And I realized how little I lived in the present and how much of the so-called past that really doesn't exist. The only thing that exists about it is what I recorded as a memory. And that memory, I choose to believe and give power to. And that's why it may affect me so deeply. Or I fight the memory, which is very much the same, where I'm putting energy to fight and resist something that really doesn't exist in reality, because it's just a picture. It's just like a picture of an apple. You can't eat the apple, and it's not real. But it reminds you of something so real that you have tasted, and you know what it tastes like, you know what it feels like, you know what it looks like. And so the picture reminds you of something that's real, but you can't eat the picture. So if it's a picture of a fire, that picture cannot possibly hurt you. So when I can see that there is no power in the picture, and the picture, it's okay to look at the picture. It's safe for me to look at the picture. Then I can let go of that, because the whole
The power that it has.
power of it and the whole mystery of it is blown. It's like there's this uncertainty that it may hurt me.
Or that
And-
it may happen again by looking at it.
Okay, that it may actually happen again. That is correct, which is this false belief that a picture is the real thing. A picture of a fire can't really hurt me, but if I don't believe that it's just a picture of the fire, it will hurt me. And it's my belief that it's real or not real that determines the outcome and how I feel. So my feelings are determined in large part by what I believe and what memories. You know, the thing is, when people are traumatized, this becomes unconscious. It's a mechanism that's unconscious, that when something happens in the moment, it triggers and activates a memory, and then I'm so trained to believe that memory and react to that memory, and then try to either fight the memory or pretend it doesn't exist, or some kind of coping with the memory, or be really scared because now I'm reliving the memory. It's like going to a movie. If you go to a movie and you let yourself make believe, you've paid the money, now you're in this dark room in a chair, and there's speakers and there's a screen, and you totally forget that nothing's really happening. There's no people up there. This is just lights flickering on a screen, and the sound is coming out of speakers, but you let yourself be hypnotized. It's a sleep. It's not reality, but you let yourself be so consumed and occupied with that reality in that moment. Let's say it's something that makes you mad. The feeling of anger is just as real as if it were based on something that's actually happening now. And because the replay of that movie, which is just a bunch of pictures, if I let that affect me, then I get carried away and I get to live in an alternate reality for that period of time. And either, I'll like it or not like it, but the feelings I feel, the tears that come, are just as real as if the thing were actually happening. And it's actually a big hoax. It's a make-believe that I buy into. Now, my contention is, because when I learned, I've practiced this now every day for 25 years about. Because I learned this, in 1990, now it's 2015. So 25 years. It has changed my life totally to where I can talk about any of my memories. That's why I'm coming here.
You're smiling when you talk about them.
I can now be relaxed because I realize those memories have no power to affect me unless I choose to make believe that there's some reality to them. So by the end of that 1 week in 1990, it was right around Thanksgiving, it took all my courage to go there. I was so relieved. It was like, if the only thing happening is what's happening right here, right now, there's nothing happening.
You're okay always. You're always.
I
okay
can
in the moment.
manage.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You're okay.
I'm okay. There's nothing, and nearly all the time, all is well, because nothing much is happening.